Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into a really interesting scientific report. It's looking at building modern enterprise web apps, the big, complex ones. And it proposes a way to make them robust, easier to maintain, and genuinely flexible. So our mission today is to unpack its core ideas. We're looking at how domain-driven design and the classic model view controller pattern can be kind of supercharged. They use this clever twist for handling web requests. What first jumped out at you when you read this?
Yeah, what's really striking is how it directly addresses that messiness you often find in web development, where the user interface, the network stuff like HTTP, and the actual business rules all get tangled together. This report suggests strategically combining domain-driven design, or DDD, with MVC to sort of cut through that complexity. It's quite elegant, actually.
Okay, let's unpack that. First up, domain-driven design, DDD. For you, the listener, who wants to really grasp the why behind the code, what's the essence of DDD? Thinking back to Eric Evans in 2003.
Right.
At its core, DDD is all about zeroing in on the complex business domain, the actual business processes and rules, and crucially, creating a shared language, a ubiquitous language that everyone involved understands. Business folks, developers, everyone. In web apps, this shapes key layers. You've got the domain layer, that's where the pure business logic lives. Things like maybe processing a load identities report or defining interfaces like presentable to ensure data looks right. Then there's the application layer. This layer kind of directs traffic, orchestrating specific tasks or use cases, maybe using something like a CSV processing command service. And the presentation layer, where the web requests actually hit. It just becomes a translator. It translates incoming web requests into calls for the application or domain layers and translates the results back out. The key is keeping that core domain logic untouched by web concerns.
Pure.
Right, keeping it pure. So how does this connect with MVC model view controller? That pattern's been around forever, since Trade Fiend's Code, 1979. How does this report propose we rethink the controller part, especially for today's APIs?
That's a really important question because, the common problem in standard web MVC is the fat controller, where one controller class just balloons, handling loads of different HTTP requests, GETs, POSTs, POUTs, deletes everything, often with annotations like a GET mapping or a POST mapping. This, it clearly breaks the single responsibility principle, one class doing way too many things. So the report's idea is to pull those specific HTTP actions out, abstract them behind dedicated handler components.
Ah, okay. So instead of one controller method handling a DDT, maybe another handling a POC for the same kind of resource, you'd have specific handler objects, like a dedicated GET handler for GET requests.
Yeah.
And the controller itself just figures out which handler to use and passes the request on.
Exactly. The controller becomes much thinner. Its main job is to understand the incoming HTTP request, the verb, the path, maybe some headers, and then delegate the actual work to the correct predefined functional handler. It still manages the HTTP specifics like packaging the response in a response entity, but the business logic, the action resides in the handler.
That sounds much cleaner. What are the big wins with that approach? Extensibility.
Huge wins for extensibility, yes. Need to add a new way to get some data. You just create and register a new GET handler instance for that specific case. You don't need to modify the controller class itself. The core logic for what that GE2 request achieves is nicely encapsulated within its handler. And it pushes you towards reusable logic and functional thinking, too. You're composing behavior with these handlers. It feels quite fundamental, almost like, basic lambda calculus ideas from church, but applied to web requests.
Right, treating actions as composable units. And this must tie in really well with the solid principles, Robert C. Martin's ideas from 2002. How do SRP and OCP benefit here?
Oh, absolutely. It's a perfect fit. The single responsibility principle, SRP, gets a massive boost. The controller has one clear responsibility: routing HTTP requests and formatting responses. That's it. All the different reasons to change related to specific business actions now belong to the individual handlers. And the open-close principle, OCP, open for extension, closed for modification, really shines. You can add new capabilities, say a new post handler or delete handler, without ever touching the existing tested controller code. You're extending the system's behavior by adding new handlers, not by modifying old code. This naturally helps with the other solid principles too, like list-off substitution if your handlers share an interface, and dependency inversion. It leads to a more robust, adaptable design overall.
Okay, so wrapping this up, for you, the listener, the big takeaway seems to be this: combining DDD's focus on the core business with a smarter, more refined MVC. Specifically, by pulling HTTP actions into these dedicated handlers, leads to better web applications. They become more extensible, easier to maintain, easier to test, and they naturally follow fundamental software design principles like solid. It seems like a powerful way to manage that inherent complexity. But what does this mean practically when you're sitting down to code your next feature?
Well, in practice, it means building systems with really clear boundaries between concerns. Your web layer, your application logic, your core domain, they can evolve more independently. You change one part without constantly worrying about breaking something seemingly unrelated. It's about building for change, building adaptable systems. And maybe this prompts a question for you to think about. If you started applying this kind of handler pattern, even just for specific parts of your own projects, where might you find surprise and simplifications? How could it make maintaining your code base easier down the road?